separating the wheat from the chaff, from what you're hearing in terms of the rumor mill, with 10 days to go for the draft, there's a lot of chaff out there, Peter. But what are you hearing about surprises? What are you hearing as a possibility atop this draft that we might not be expecting right now?
Well, probably the thing that surprised me the most in 8 or 10 conversations Friday and Saturday was how much, and again, this is a little bit down in the weeds for people who want my next 5 sentences to be about quarterbacks. Sure. But I assumed going into my weekend that the vast majority of the teams had Jeffrey Okudah, the Ohio State corner, number 1. And I was told, and this was backed up to me too, that there's a lot of teams in the league who have C.J. Henderson, the Florida corner, ranked ahead of Okudah. So you could, that's one of the reasons why everybody thinks that the Lions want to dump out of that pick at 3, that there's not a single player that they're in love with. But let's say the Chargers or Miami or some team that maybe we're not expecting, Jacksonville, which I heard really wants to give Minshew a shot and isn't totally focused on a quarterback high. But is it possible that somebody will be so in love and a little bit, they want to be absolutely sure they can get him, either Herbert or Tagovailoa could move up with Detroit to number 3. That is possible. But I also think, as I told somebody this weekend, I said, hey, listen, Tom Telesco of the Chargers has not made a draft weekend trade for the last 3 years. And so I think he's made only one trade that involves a draft pick. That was 2 years ago. He traded a 7 for Cardell Jones. But I do think, Rich, mostly Detroit is where I think the traffic really is probably going to start.
And then that's where I want to start unpacking what you just said there, Peter, because, I know Okudah may not be atop the cornerback draft board for all teams, and that might be a reason why the Lions would want to get out of 3, but my gosh, there's so many transformative players potentially, from Isaiah Simmons to any of the tackles to any of the pass rushers outside of Chase Young that the Lions could use the 3rd overall pick on. But that said, the Tua market is really what might drive that pick being the domino, the big domino to fall here.
Rich, I think the big question is, what is the Tua market right now?
That's the question.
I mean, I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is. You have a guy who is an FOSR, friend of Stephen Ross, Mike Tannenbaum, say I think it'd be irresponsible to take 2 in the top 10 of the draft, coming off all of his injuries. And I totally get it. I've had so many Miami fans say, what in the world are you talking about? The Dolphins have been pointing to Tua for the last 2 years or the last year and a half. And I said, well, that kind of changed, didn't it, last fall? When he got another high ankle sprain that required surgery, and when he had a very serious hip injury that required major surgery. So you can't tell me that the market for Tua in April of 2020 is the same as the market for Tua was in September of 2019. Life changes. So, and again, Miami might trade up and trade a passel of picks to get up to number 3. I don't know. But I just know that is going to be, as I spelled out in my column today, 14 years ago, the Dolphins had a gigantic decision to make. Risk signing Drew Brees, coming off major shoulder surgery, may not be ready for the start of the season, or take the safer guy, Dante Culpepper. Well, that decision turned out to be a horrible one by Nick Saban and the Dolphins, and it, in fact, led to Saban at the end of that year leaving Miami. Imagine how the course of football history would have been changed if he signed Drew Brees. Imagine how the Patriots' history might have changed if Nick Saban signed Drew Brees. But I'm just saying that just the same way that decision was huge for the franchise in 2006, They have another quarterback injury decision to make in 2020 that is the biggest story of this draft.
Yeah, and you're hearing from Team Tua, from Lee Steinberg to also Trent Dilfer, agent and throwing coach, that Tua is as great as he's ever been, that he looks as great as he's ever been, and you're seeing the video that came out. I mean, the arm strength is there. I guess
I just have two things to say about that.
Right.
If you were a guy's throwing coach and you were working with him for a long time, what would you say about him?
No, I know.
That's number one.
Again, I know.
And number two,
right.
If he was hobbled in any way, shape, or form, you think they'd release the video?
Well, I mean, you could see it. You could see that he's not hobbled.
I'm not blaming them. They're Lee Steinberg, Chris Cabot. Those are his agents, and they are excellent agents. Okay, but that doesn't address what so many teams wonder about, which is Tua going to be able to play 12 or 15 years? If you draft a quarterback and want him to be your franchise quarterback, you're not taking him so you turn that position over again in 5 years.
Yeah, he doesn't look hobbled to me, though, Peter. I mean, he looks spry, man.
I am not saying he's hobbled in any way.
Right.
But all I'm saying is that, I mean, you have to consider the injury history on this guy. You just do. And anybody who doesn't is really not being responsible. I understand the wave the flag for Tua thing. If I worked for them, I would be doing exactly the same thing. But there's one thing to say, I love Tua the football player. There's another thing to say, okay, we're guaranteeing him $30 million and he's going to be our quarterback. And you know what? If I had all the knowledge that the Dolphins had and their doctors stood up and said, I stake my reputation on this, I'd take him and I wouldn't worry about it. But I don't know what team doctors inside the Miami Dolphins or Chargers or whoever are saying about Tua.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.